So how was the first year at UT?
Rough. That's where that's
where the story really
that's
starts.
where the story really starts. I wanted to share that though because like for me, like that whole beginning part is where my belief in myself really started. You know, I learned setting a vision for yourself and truly not just like saying you believe it, but truly believing that if I do this work, I can achieve this. And once I signed that letter of intent, I mean, dude, it was just so euphoric. It was like 5 years of working and training, people telling me I wasn't going to do it, all the financial issues I had, just getting equipment, because I mean, this stuff doesn't last long. Like throwing shoes, hammer gloves, tape, chalk, like there's so much more to it than people think. But being a high school student, like we didn't have a lot of money and I worked, but like it still wasn't enough to pay for meets and travel and all that. So for me, like I really, it was just beautiful for me, honestly, knowing that I took literally nothing. I had no skill set, no coach, no real talent in the sport, and I turned it into something that was special. So that's kind of why I wanted to share that. It's just the power of believing and having a vision for yourself is truly powerful.
No, that's super important. I'm glad we went through all that. And like, it's I don't know, I couldn't imagine like how, like you said, euphoric and how amazing that must have felt. Like all those hours and hours and hours you put in training, and I'm sure during that time, all you could think about was like, we're gonna get a scholarship, we're gonna go to school for this, we're gonna get all this stuff paid for by putting in this work up front. And it's like the short term sacrifices for the long term gains, and like being willing to put in the work when nobody else around you is telling you to do it, nobody's telling you to go spend 5 hours at the track after practice and do it, but you're the one doing it. And I'm sure a lot of days you didn't want to be out there necessarily because you'd rather go home and do something else or whatever. But yeah, I'm sure that was just like super rewarding and super gratifying.
It was, man. It was, especially proving a lot of haters wrong. That was the cool one. But circling back to your question, the first year at UT, I think my biggest mistake was not having a goal after getting the scholarship. Because when I got to UT, it was all fun and games, dude. I mean, I was already still playing around with drugs. I mean, I got into a few drugs in high school, but it wasn't like serious or anything. But once I got to UT, I got really involved in the party scene. I was abusing my ADHD medication quite often, which was Adderall and Vyvanse. I was on a pretty high dosage, and it got to a point to where I was trying to keep up with the student athlete lifestyle while also trying to keep up with the partying lifestyle, while also trying to keep up with my academics, which all of that does not mix. So for me, trying to make up for all of that, I was just taking more and more of my medication. I was getting scripts from other people. I'd stay out all night, and then I'd have 3 hours to sleep before turning around to go to practice at 5:30. So I was really falling back on the Adderall and the Vyvanse, and I was taking way more than I should have. And like a part of me in the back of my head was like, maybe I'm overdoing this. Like this is not something I should play with. But another part of me was thinking, well, my doctor prescribed this. This is a medication that tons of people are on. It's not like I bought it off the streets, so I can continue using it the way I'm using it, which was a complete delusionary thought that I put for myself. But that entire first semester, I mean, I got there partying. I failed my first drug test, like literally the first week I was there, which was so embarrassing.
Was it from the Adderall that tripped it? Or?
It was from pot, actually. So they didn't test for the Adderall or the Vyvanse because I was prescribed to it.
That makes sense. Okay.
So that wasn't really a concern for them, which ironically, that was the biggest problem, which was, I think, where a big misunderstanding was between me and the trainers and the coaches at the time. But yeah, so I failed that drug test. My coach gave me a talk. He was pretty embarrassed, and I was embarrassed too. I felt awful because this one guy who gave me a chance for something I've been working so hard for, and then I show up and I didn't blow it yet, but I was definitely on track to blow it.
What happens when you fail a drug test? Is it just like a warning, basically, or?
So to be honest with you, I can't exactly remember, but I know after the second and third one, I was definitely suspended for 1.5 years. So I wouldn't have been able to compete until my sophomore or junior year. So after that, for me, I kind of like started spiraling a little bit. I still had my chance to prove myself at the school and the team. So I was still showing up to practices despite being out partying all night and showing up hungover. I was still getting my work done. I was, complaining about it. I wasn't happy about it, but
the like school aspect.
Yeah, the school aspect I didn't do a whole lot of. I actually finished my freshman year with a 1.6 GPA. Yeah, it's still biting me in the ass. I'm not gonna lie, but
That's rough.
it was
But
very rough.
There's a lot happening.
There was a lot happening, man. And honestly, I don't even think I was fully there most of the time. I think I was just gliding with my medication and the partying and, supplementing all these negative feelings with more drugs and more partying. And
was it like people on the track team that you were hanging out with? Like, was that kind of an incentive?
mostly Greek life. And then people I met downtown. I mean, being in downtown Austin, you bump into all kinds of people. And I just got associated with the wrong crowd. And it got to a point to where I kind of thought I was cool for being the kid that party, but was also on the track team, and which wasn't cool at all, by the way. But I kind of fell into that, and I started partying more, almost like I wanted to live up to this expectation that everybody thought, like, wow, he's a party animal, but he's also, a great thrower, which those two do not mix. And it caught up to me after a while.
Were you still like performing at track meets and stuff while all this was happening?
So I actually never competed in college.
Oh, really?
Yes, I got removed from the team right after winter break of my freshman year. So
one semester?
It was literally one semester, yeah.
Dang.
So that actually, so how that happened was I was in bad shape the last 2 months of that semester. I mean, really bad shape. I was at the point to where I was staying up for 4 to 5 days at a time on my medicine. Jesus. And it got to a point to where I couldn't afford to get any more Adderall or Vyvanse. And I knew somebody that had crystal meth. And he told me that it was the cheap drug that all the rich people were using. He sold me on a bunch of whole other bullshit. But for me, I was in so much pain. I was fiending so hard for that feeling that I just, I caved in. I was like, yeah, sure, why not? It was so cheap. It was so easy to get. And I started taking that. And then that's when I started staying up for 3, 4, 5 days at a time. And then the last week of the semester was like a testing week for the track and field athletes. So we, like, all the different sports in track and field, the runners, the sprinters, the throwers, the pole vaulters, we'd all go to the track, and there was like a testing thing. So we'd all test for like a mile, our broad jump, all that stuff. So I knew that was supposed to be at 6 o'clock the next morning. And I went out the night before and I got drunk with a bunch of, I think it was a mixer for one of the fraternities and sororities that I was friends with. And I took 3 Xanax, multiple shots, a lot of Jello shots. After that, don't really remember, but I ended up trying to jump off a balcony that night. And one of my friends ended up knocking me out because I was going crazy. I wanted to kill myself because of all the pain and all the thoughts that I had on my head. So I actually have a picture of that. I'll share it with you after this. Yeah. But you wouldn't even recognize me. It looked completely different. I think I had it in that video I showed you.
Were you wearing like a basketball jersey?
Yeah, okay. Well, I was all bloody. Yeah. Like, I was overweight, about 200 pounds.
Yeah, you're a little bit thicker than you were now. Yeah.
Man, that's still hard to look at, not going to lie.
Do you think it was like all the partying and the lack of sleep and all that was...
The lack of sleep, the malnutrition. I mean, I wouldn't eat for 3 to 4 days, and then I'd turn around and plow down like 20 chicken strips from Whataburger. So it was like, you can only imagine what that nutrition routine was doing to me. It was awful. I felt like shit. I looked like shit. I was acting like shit. I mean, I was a shell of a person. I was not the person that I wanted to be.
Damn.
And I ended up showing up to practice, still wearing the jersey, still blood on my face, dripping down the side of my cheek. I thought I had slept, but I'd really just laid in bed for 2 hours. I showed up an hour late to practice. So I get out there, and my head coach is out there, the head track and field coach, my throws coach, and the athletic director. And my group, the throwers, had already started their little warm-up for the testing session. Mm-hmm. And I walk up to my coach. I said, sorry, I'm late, blah, blah, blah. I can't even remember what I told him, to be honest with you, but it was a whole bunch of gibberish. And he just looked at me just so disappointed. And he said, I can't even look at you right now. He said, just go back to your dorm. I'll call you later. So after that, I knew it was over. I was like, this is it. No more. Like, I need to get help. So I went to the trainers and I let them know like just how severe my situation was. And they wanted to get me help. They were on board. My coach showed up. Like, they were very, very helpful, very warming about the situation because I caved in and said, like, I want to get help. So after that, I ended up going back home for the winter break, and they said, go get treatment for, 2-3 weeks. Just go to a treatment center, and then we'll talk about your place on the team when you get back. Well, I didn't really know what treatment center meant. I thought that just meant go to therapy twice a week. So I went to therapy twice a week, and my coach called me after the winter break, and he's like, hey, just wanted to check in. How you doing? Wanted to see how treatment went. And I was like, yeah, I was like, it's been good. I've been seeing a therapist like once a week, and he's been helping me navigate this issue. And my coach goes, let me call you back. Called me back an hour later, and he told me that they removed me from the roster. And he said, that's not what we meant by get treatment. He said, like, look, like, I want to help you, but it seems like your issue is a little bit far out of reach than we expected. And I just don't think the University of Texas is a good place for you. I think you've got some other things to figure out right now. And he was right, to an extent. But after that, I spiraled out of control. I was still in the university, just removed from the track team. So I came back for my second semester, and my goal was, I'm just going to party. I'm just going to take it through the roof, just have as much fun as possible. I'm probably going to flunk out, so I might as well just have fun while I'm still here. And horrible, horrible thought process. But I came back, and, the 4 to 5 nights to stand up, that continued. I started using profusely. I got into cocaine, got into opiates, got into I was just mixing anything and everything that would make me feel good. And let's see, when was it? I think it was at the end of February. I had stayed in my car. Don't ask me why, but I was in my car using in a parking garage, and I was there. I was up for probably about 7.5 days, just blacking in and out. I was seeing people. And then my car finally ran out of gas. So I started walking back to my dorm, and I passed out on the sidewalk. I woke back up, and it was like 7:30 in the morning, 45 degrees outside. I was shivering. I thought I was going to die from hypothermia. And I go back to my dorm room, and I just decided like I was done. So I tried to swallow my entire script of Vyvanse, which is about 70 milligram pills. And then I blacked out for like 2-3 hours. And then I woke up, and I called an Uber to go to an emergency room, because I was like, I don't want to go out like this. I don't know what's going on. It was just so confusing. Like, what goes through your head when you're in that deep, it's just, it's dark. It's dark. So I called an Uber, and I got taken to an emergency room, and I walked in, and I didn't really have any words to say. I didn't know how to talk. I was just fog headed to the max. And I just said like, hey, like, I'm dying. Like, I need help. I'm dying. And I just sat down in the waiting room, and they came over, they brought me into a room, and they put an IV in my arm. They tried to hydrate me, tried to give me food. My body was rejecting it. And then they gave me some medication to help me sleep. So I crashed for like 5-6 hours, and then I wake up, and my parents are walking in the room, and they live in Houston. So they drove about 3 hours to come see me, and my mom just broke down crying. And that for me was such a pivotal moment for me. It was like, oh my gosh, like that's when I realized like I wasn't just hurting myself, I was hurting the people around me. So that was a big rude awakening. And I knew that I was leaving Austin at that point. So they packed me up, brought me back to Houston, and then I knew that they wanted me to go to rehab, but they knew I wasn't going to be able to go unless I wanted it. So I came back to Houston. I tried to get a job. I tried to kind of get back on my feet, but I was so hooked at that time, I couldn't stay away from it. So one night, after being up 2 nights on cocaine, I went into my mom's room Sunday morning. I told her like, hey, I just bawled crying. I said, like, I need help. I want to, like, whatever we got to do. Like, I need help. I can't do this anymore. And at this point, Jeremy, I had no friends I could call. Family members, there was a couple of family members that didn't want much to do with me. Not that they didn't care, it's just they couldn't handle it. My brother, very upset with me, didn't really talk to them a whole lot at that point. I had lost everything that I'd worked so hard for, which for me, like, I wanted to kill myself. I hated my life. I hated what I had come to. So that Sunday morning, my mom reached out to a rehab center, took me the next day, and I went there for 30 days, and I got clean. Got out, lived in a sober home for 4 months, and started working a job and started getting myself back on my feet.